back to the most compelling costumes for Game of Thrones, this one for Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice. It was such a thrilling episode with lots of fantastic exteriors and wide shots with lots of new costumes to talk about. I'll be doing these episode recaps all through the summer, so if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And a warning that there will be spoilers in this episode for everything that's happened in the show so far, and most importantly, the new season of Game of Thrones. So come back and watch this after you've seen The Queen's Justice. So without further ado, let's count down what I think are the most compelling costumes in Episode 3, starting with number 10. This is Bernadette. You might wonder who she is, but she's actually been Cersei's handmaiden since 2011. Don't believe me? This is what she looked like back then, when King's Landing was all pastels and floaty fabrics. Now Cersei has forced her staff to dress like her and chop off their hair in a god-awful pixie cut. Yes, you could argue that this is trickle-down fashion, but I don't buy it for a second. Maybe with this new look, Bernadette at least got promoted to executive secretary or something. You might remember that I had Euron on my list for the episode Dragonstone. I've got him here again because he's added this Ironborn style cape, which in my opinion looks so much better. It's most likely waxed cloth, although Euron's is black instead of gray, like the rocks of the Iron Islands. You can see at the back that it has a midi-style boat collar, just like the Ironborn sailors that rescued Theon. And here, that it drapes in a scarf-like fashion in the front while cascading at the back. And as I mentioned in my previous episode, I think this look would have worked better for Euron in the first episode. So I looked at Jon Snow's costume last episode, but I thought it was important to include him again because we can see so much more of his costume when he's not wearing his cape. So for instance, Jon's metal gorget is edged in leather and he wears a soft green cravat, which is a color from the bottom portion of the Stark sigil. He's wearing his coat of plates over a gray leather quilted gambesson. Michelle Clapton said in an interview of this decision of losing the cape, "We had a lot of discussions about, does the cape give him presence or is it better to not have that presence? What are we trying to say? There are times when we removed it because we wanted him to be more vulnerable." She adds, "There are times when we removed it because we wanted him to be more vulnerable, especially I think when he saw Dany and he went to see her for the first time in her chamber. We decided to remove it." In this scene at the request of Missandei, Jon has removed his sword and sword belt to meet with Daenerys. With the exception of the black color, you can see how close Jon's armor is to that of his father Ned, both when he was young and old. Tyrion's outfit is more of a partial change. Smartly, costume designer Michelle Clapton has made it so that many of the characters' costume pieces are interchangeable. So in this case, Tyrion has just added a smart brocade jerkin over top of his leather doublet. It sort of dresses up his look for when Jon comes to visit Dany. In keeping with Game of Thrones quality construction, the stripes match up perfectly at the center front, creating this chevron pattern. And if you look closely, you'll see that the stripes have a hint of blue. This is rare, but we get to see Tyrion's awesome leather boots. I had to include these costumes because of the sheer enormity of the scene. While I was disappointed that we didn't get to see the siege of Highgarden, we did get the scope of the troops advancing as Olenna watched from her window. In this shot, you can see Dickon and Randall Tarly with Bronn wearing their plate armor over their leather coats and mail shirts. To my understanding, this is the first time we've actually seen the Tarly military uniforms. There are really only two types of armor that I can detect. So there's the Lannister plate armor of the cavalry and the leather tabards of the footmen and archers. So the foot soldiers wear red cloth Roman-style tunics under their tabards. And here's a background holding image of the Lannister armor and helms. Clothing that many extras would be an enormous undertaking for the wardrobe department, granted. Some of it might have been CGI. These soldiers hold kite shields versus the cavalry who use oval shields. Here's a close-up shot of the archers at Casterly Rock. The red leather strips on the tabard are held into position with large cross stitches. Here's a behind-the-scene wardrobe shot of the armor maker creating the leather tabards, and you can see the embossed Lannister sigil on the riveted leather collar. Well, isn't this a bit of fresh air? Cersei wearing this pretty dressing gown. Makes sense since her clothing in the throne room and the Red Keep is meant to intimidate and generally show everyone who's boss. It's interesting that since she has essentially masculinized the women's clothing, at least in the court, that she goes back to her wafty, Asian-inspired dressing gown in the same shape as her dresses from season 1. Sorry, these are really bad pictures, but it appears to be made from sheer silk, but it might also be Indian sari cotton. And there's a very pretty applique at the back. If you blink, you will miss it. Okay, so Sansa has another gray dress, so she doesn't have to wear the same look every day. But really, it looks so much like her first outfit, and that one of my viewers actually wondered why they even bothered. And that's my thoughts exactly. So I was, of course, specifically looking for a change, but I'm certain that the average person wouldn't know the difference. It's gray, it's a dress, and it's under a cloak. Here's her other look in case you've forgotten. Same belt, same necklace, same cape. And I'm heading out into questioning the designer's intent territory, but perhaps she could not make the costume so literal and full of symbolism. Perhaps occasionally they can just be clothes. And, the prettier the better. Anyway, I'll share with you what Michelle Clapton has to say about Sansa from an insider interview, and you can make up your own mind about it. She says, "There's just a showing of strength among the women, and in a funny way, this is true with Sansa as well. She has the chain, she has the circle, she's bringing all that she's been through to her costume. You need to look at her story, her strength and the way she's clothed to protect herself from the things that have happened. At the same time, she's beginning to assert herself as an independent woman and not actually being manipulated by anyone anymore. And so it's just a stepping forward of each of these three women, well, fourth if you include Arya." I've been waiting for this costume for like 6 months. I think it's that long when the first teaser came out. So we got a bit of a look at it last week, but you might remember that it was so dark that we could barely see it. So here it is. I've said plenty about this costume in a few of my previous videos. Here is what Michelle Clapton has to say about it. "She can't have a crown. She hasn't conquered yet. But I love this idea of this chain of intent." And in an interview with Insider, Clapton says, "Well, we've had 6 seasons so far where we've explored different areas, and it's coming down to the crux now. And actually with Dany, subliminally it's monochrome, but there's actually red there. A little bit of her house colors coming in finally." And in case you've been yelling at the screen asking why Dany is not in red yet, Clapton has this to say. "So now, finally, you see the red creeping in, and the scale, and the shape of her brother's costumes. If I did that in season 3, where would you go? So sometimes it's very frustrating when people say, 'Oh, well, why did you put her in white?' Look at the whole story. Look at the journey. I think that's really important. People are born from their journey, and they will get where they need to get to. Or, well, they'll die. Whatever, but it's a process. It's important to go through that and to take your time, I think." Here's a really great shot of the costume, and you can see the red actually pops. In this close-up, you can see that the fabric of the cobra collar has been brushed with red dye or paint. A detail that I hadn't noticed before is this lacing of the sleeves. And if you want to learn more about this costume, I've analyzed it in the Costumes of Westeros Part 4, so I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. And finally, I thought I'd add that Dany wears her mother Queen Rhaella Targaryen's ring, something that actor Emilia Clarke confirmed has been worn since the series began. And YouTuber Rose Reaper's Geek Tea Party, and seriously, how awesome is that channel name, informed me that Dany's iron and gold ring is made by London-based sculptor and jewelry maker Gloria Carlos, and she's also created Dany's matching bangle worn in Season 3. And you can purchase your own limited edition ring and bangle from Gloria Carlos's website, so I'll leave a link in the description below. Well, isn't this gown a queenly gown fit for a mad queen? Color aside, I love the cut of it. A very fitted, body-hugging torso and sleeves with these pannier folds of fabric at the hip sides. I think the matte satin fabric is a peau de soie, which is also known as Duchess satin because of the stiffness of the fabric. This is what Michelle Clapton has to say about Cersei's look here. She's attained the throne and there's a strength in her embroidery. It's actually quite ornate and over the top, and that's a precursor in a funny way. It's the last gasp before something else, in my sense. It's a weird flamboyance, but it's quite hard as well. Here is a rear view of the spectacular collar. My only issue with the back of this dress is that it could have used a bit of fullness at the back, like some soft pleated tulle or maybe a bum pad. You might find that the panniers are similar to Sansa's wedding gown from her marriage to Tyrion. As you might recall, that gown would have been designed by Cersei for Sansa, so the connection to me seems logical. There was a little bit of confusion as to why Cersei was wearing pink lip gloss that in the end turned out to be poison. I guess that it's available in a range of shades, since Illyria's looked to be plum. I don't normally get into hair. It falls under another department in TV that's responsible for it. But we are only 3 episodes in, and I want to just rip Kevin Alexander's 2 Emmys away from him for Cersei's mess of a wig. I would rather see Cersei bald than watch another episode of her wearing that wig. Can we not return to this former glory? Before we get to number 1, here are a few honorable mentions. I had Olenna in last week's list, but since this is the last time we're likely to see the Queen of Thorns, I thought it only fitting that I include her. So last week we couldn't see her outfit that well, but it appears to be a chocolate brown silk. Just lovely as always, and I will miss her jabs and barbs, especially enjoyed her final moments with Jaime. Here's a clean-shaven Tycho Nestorius, the representative of the Iron Bank of Braavos, wearing this surprisingly lovely outfit for his meeting with Queen Cersei. Unlike the more medieval stylings of King's Landing, Tycho's costume is Elizabethan with his neck ruff, and you might recall that Tycho was also in Season 4 and 5. What outfit might be perfect to wear on the cliffs of Dragonstone while staring out into the sea while being approached from behind by the King of the North? Why, this beauty here, of course. I like baubles and beading and thingamawatches just like the rest of us, but sometimes simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Oh, apparently that was said by Leonardo da Vinci, or actually maybe it was Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm not quite sure. Clapton says, "You can see in the way Dany is dressing that she's almost assuming the power, but not quite. With all the colors and the details and the essence, it just becomes stronger. The width of the shoulders give her strength. The chain gives her strength. I tried to make the cut of the costumes just slightly more like a uniform and almost less feminine." The fabric is silvery in a way, or gray with silvery threads. Clapton says, "Often people say, well, why isn't Dany in red and black? And it's like, give it a chance. We'll get there. But if she's in red and black at the beginning, then we have nowhere to go." Here's a great shot of the back. Here we get an idea of the collar seaming. And you can see the hectagonal shape fits nicely into the dress openings of Dany and Missandei's costumes. I mentioned in another video the repeated use of the hexagon in the costumes of the Red Priests and Priestesses. You can even see this shape repeated in Dany's Dragonstone throne room. If you want to learn more about the shape and its symbolism, be sure to check out the costumes of Melisandre of Asshai. I'll leave a link in the description below. And just for fun, viewer Simon Deuce pointed out something to me this week, that perhaps the showrunners were paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This retro hexagonal carpet pattern seen here has been the subject of multiple fan theories. They even sell clothing and decor, like this sweater and balaclava. It looks a bit like Quaith's mask, don't you think? So what do you think of Sansa's drab colors or Cersei's haircut? Are the repeated use of hexagons just a coincidence? Just let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, find me on Twitter so that you can join me, viewers Pikachu, and Professor Cicely as we chat Game of Thrones between episodes. I'll leave a link in the description below, and I'll be back with another recap next week. In the meantime, you can check out the costumes of Peter Baelish. I just uploaded it last night. So thank you so much for watching.